Good afternoon, boys and girls. We're very excited to be here at Mark West, 3rd grade, to talk to you about the honeybees. We are coming from Sonoma Honey Beekeepers. That's my logo on my shirt. My name is Jen. I'm an educator, teacher, and a beekeeper, and this is Mike. He's a professional beekeeper. He's going to give you all the information about what it really means to be a beekeeper for a living. And we're really glad you invited us in to talk about bees, because the bees are so important. Do you guys know why we keep bees? What would be one reason that we have bees in our backyard, or Mike does this for a living? What's one thing we think about bees? For this one jar of honey, a bee had to visit 864 bees visited 72,000 flowers to make one jar.
They just get, each time they go to a flower, they just get a little tiny sip.
Can you say that one more time? So to get that jar of honey,
864 bees, more or less, let's say 800 bees, went to 72,000 flowers. And here I have some apple pretend flowers. Bees visiting those flowers, getting the nectar and the pollen, right? So here's something I want to show you really quickly before we really get going. If you go shopping with your mom or dad, or whoever does the shopping, you might go to a grocery store that looks like this. There's oranges and apples and all sorts of melons and lettuces. So it looks like Safeway, it's actually Whole Foods, and they let us use this picture. But the people at Whole Foods said, wow, bees are so important, they pollinate so many things. What would happen if we didn't have any bees? What would this look like? I'm just going to show you guys. If the bees weren't pollinating, look at the grocery store down here at the bottom. Can you see how many foods are gone if the bees aren't there to pollinate them? No more melons. Thumbs up if you like strawberries. Thumbs up if you like cherries. Or any fruit with a pit like peaches and plums, broccoli, lettuce, all those things, almonds, all the nuts. Someone doesn't like almonds. Anyway, those are gone without the bees. So the bees are really, really important because of pollination. And Mike, the professional beekeeper, is going to tell you a little bit about what it's like to be a beekeeper.
Hi, I'm Mike. And, okay, so beekeepers wear different kind of clothes. And what do you notice about this suit that's special? It protects you from the bees so they don't sting you. That's right. So it zips up, has a hood like this. So this zips around like this so the bees can't sting me. So it's a protection. This is another kind of bee protection. It doesn't have a suit attached to it, but you can put it on your head and you pull this string tight like this, and it will keep the bees from stinging your face.
Do you guys want to see if maybe your teacher wants to try this on? Totally. There are no real bees here. We're just pretending that if you put this on, you'll see exactly how well it works.
While she's doing that, I want to ask you a question. Why is it white? Why do we wear a white suit?
Maybe it's because
I raise the teacher every day.
Some bees like beautiful colors, but if it's white, they don't really notice it.
That's exactly right. They can't see white.
can't see red.
Well, you know, that's an interesting point. When they see red, they see differently than we do. They see more light and dark. They see some colors, but when they see red, it really looks very dark and almost black to them. So it has a different look to it. Now, we wear white because we're kind of invisible to the bees. The colors we don't want to wear are dark colors, black and brown. What kind of animals are brown and woolly, big? Bears, that's right. Bees don't like bears. Bears eat honeybees and they break their hives up. What kind of animal is black? Maybe has a white stripe on it.
Black bear.
No white stripe there.
Zebra.
No. They smell bad.
Oh, skunk.
Skunks. Most people don't know this, but skunks eat bees. And so bees don't like things that are black and furry or brown.
You know, let's just pretend this was a real bee. If Mike was a bear getting into this beehive right here, he was going to go after the babies in there and the honey. This bee would be coming out, the guard bee's coming out and saying, oh no, we're getting invaded, let's sting him. But if he was a real bear, the stinger wouldn't be able to get through his fur, right? Even a skunk or a raccoon has really thick fur. So bees have gotten smart. They go right for the mouth and the nose, because right around the eyes, the mouth, and the nose is vulnerable for a bear, or a skunk, or a raccoon, and us too,
And
right?
the eyes too.
And the eyes. So will you put your hood back on? I'm going to show you guys exactly what happens. If this hive feels like it's being threatened and someone's coming in to take its honey or do harm, there are guard bees. They spread the word, we're being invaded, and they come usually right for our faces. But do you see how Mike is safe? Bees would be flying right here. And
I'll tell you a little secret. Sometimes, see how my nose is touching the screen? I've been stung right on the end of my nose. So beekeepers do get stung sometimes. Since I brought that up, what do you do when you get stung by a bee? Run around and yell, or what do you do? Calm down's a good one. What do you think?
Go to your mom and dad.
That's a good one. What's another?
Say that you got stung and they can put stuff on it.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what do you do just immediately when you know you've been stung?
Take it out.
Try to pull up the,
Yeah,
try to pull up the stinger.
that's what I was going for, and you said it too. You'll see the stinger, the bee will sting you, and you'll see a little stinger in your arm, in your skin. So what you want to do is immediately whip out your credit card. You all have credit cards, right?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
No.
Get something like a credit card, or your fingernail works good, and scrape like this. Just scrape the stinger out. Don't pinch like that. You don't have the turkey baster today, do you?
here's the reason why.
Yeah.
Do you see this model of the bee right here?
Yeah.
On the inside, which is painted by a friend of ours, a beekeeper, it shows you the stinger and the venom sac right here. Now a bee can sting another insect over and over and over again. This little barbed stinger doesn't get stuck. It can sting multiple times, but on a human, my skin is so thick that it pulls out. This has got a little barb on it. It pulls the stinger out, and with the stinger comes part of the body, and what that body is this venom sac. It's kind of like a little squirt gun squirting more poison into your body. So if you squeeze it, when you pull it out, you're squeezing the poison into your skin.
That's why we
You scrape.
scrape or scratch, and it'll come out. I guarantee you it won't sting for very much. It'll just sting for a second, and then it'll stop stinging. It might swell up a little bit, but it'll be a lot better.
Has anybody been stung by one of these? Thumbs up if you've been stung by one of these. Thumbs up if this is a bee. Thumbs down if you know it's not. You guys have learned that this is not. This is a wasp, a yellow jacket. But a lot of people, when they're eating their picnic, do get stung by these insects, and they blame the honeybees. Honeybees don't really want to sting you. If you happen to step on one or put your hand on a flower where they're collecting their food, you might get stung by a bee at that point. But most of the time, wasps who like to eat meat, bees don't eat meat. They eat from flowers. So wasps eating our sandwiches or hamburgers are right around where we're eating, and it's easier to get stung by them. But they are not bees. They are not honeybees. You know, we're going to save questions for the very end. Is that okay? Because we've got a lot to tell you in a short amount of time.
Just real quick, I just want to show you, this is a beehive. It's a small one, and there's no bees in it.
Hold it up
And
here.
now we put bees in a box, but in nature they live in trees. They can live in a hollow hole that's inside of a hollow tree. Have you seen one? You seen one like that?
I've seen it.
You can show him the Me
Yeah.
Too sign. If
Yeah.
you've seen one, you can show him the Me Too sign. You
Yeah,
can
yeah.
practice nonverbal.
And so what they do in there, what's in that hive? Well, they build honeycomb, and I think everybody kind of knows what honeycomb is, but this is what honeycomb looks like in a beekeeper's hive. And you see this wooden frame is put in a box, and then the bees make the comb in the frame. And the reason we do this, the reason we put frames like this, is so that we can take them in and out, just like I'm doing right now. And you can look at them and you can see what they're making. If they're making honey, or they're raising baby bees, or if they're not making honey, or so you can manage the hive. You can set it down.
And you know, I just want to say real quickly, here's a little piece of beeswax. It's very light. This hasn't had any honey or babies in it yet. Bees were just busy making this when this hive died. And this is where the wax comes from. I'll bet you guys maybe didn't know where bees even get the wax. At a certain age, when they're young inside the hive, they have not left the hive yet. When they're born, they have a number of jobs. The first job is to clean their own cells. You guys know how butterflies get a cocoon or a chrysalis? Bees do the same thing, and that's why that honeycomb in here, or that comb, that's really dark, it's dark because of the chrysalis that's left behind after they've become a bee. So they clean out their cell, and then they go and they take care of the other babies. They might take care of the queen. And then there's a point where the bee has these glands on its stomach. Can you see that wax coming out? Wax sheets are coming out of its stomach. It takes those wax sheets and it grinds it up in its mouth, manipulates it, makes it soft, and they know how to make a perfect shape. Thumbs up if you know what shape a cell is in a beehive. Do you guys know how many sides it has? Show me how many sides if you know. It's a 6-sided shape, and that's called a hexagon. 6 has an X, hex has an X.
And you're talking about these little holes in here, right?
Yep, those are called cells.
Can I walk that around so they can see?
Yeah,
Can I do both?
yeah, and you know what, if they want to smell this, it smells really good. Do you want us to show this or just that?
Please.
Because we give you 2 of those too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, get one, send one around the other way, too.
Okay, so if third graders are gonna handle it, you need to look.
Look with your eyes.
Look with your eyes and smell it, and then pass it on, and you wait patiently for someone to hand it to you, so we don't disrupt the
You
presentation.
can give it to her.
And you know what, you guys on that one, it's easy to see maybe in the darker one. That one has 2 different sizes, small hexagons and large hexagons. The larger hexagons are where the boy babies are grown. The queen will lay an egg in there, and it's a bigger cell because the drone is a little bigger. The small hexagons are where the girl bees are born.
What was the boy bee called?
Yeah, what is a boy bee called? You guys know the name for boys? They're called
Females.
drones. Might as well talk about drones for a second.
Please.
This is a boy bee. Thumbs up if you think he can sting. Do boy bees sting? Thumbs up or not? Let's see. Oh, I got a lot of no's, so someone has probably told you guys. Boy bees do not sting. In fact, boy bees don't go out to visit flowers. Boy bees don't make wax. They don't feed the other bees. There's only one job boy bees have, and that's to mate with the queen. And that's why boy bees have these really big eyes. If you ever sat by a beehive and you watched the bees coming and going, and you noticed some that had really big eyes, in the spring, especially in the summer.
And they're big, and fuzzy.
My daughter goes into our backyard by our beehives and she collects the drones and she holds them in her hand without ever fearing that she'll get stung. Some people are amazed, but they just don't know that the boys can't sting. So they have these really big eyes and a slightly longer body. Here's a picture of a boy hatching, coming out of one of those bigger cells. He had to kind of eat his way through the wax, and there he is. And right away, the girl bees are going to start feeding him, just like they feed and take care of the queen. They take care of the boy bees. Is there anything else about beekeeping? I think we covered it.
Well, I think we covered enough.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's see what we want to jump on. Maybe. What makes a bee an insect? Do you guys know what makes a bee an insect? Yes.
A bee makes it an insect because it has 6 legs.
Excellent.
Wow, very good.
And these
Yeah.
black pipes are supposed to be the legs, so let's make sure there's all 6. Yep, 1, 2, 3, 3 on each side. Anything else that makes a bee an insect? How many body parts? Just show me with your fingers. How many body parts does a bee have? And I see a lot of people holding up 3. 3 body parts. Excellent. Do you guys know what they're called? This is kind of cool. Our friend made this so we can take it apart. What do you suppose this is called? It's the same as our head, bee's head. I'll let Mike hold the head. The middle part, which I call the muscle, this is where the 6 legs come off. And how many wings are on a bee? 2. Most people say 2, but guess what? The answer is 4. It's hard to see all 4, but they have 4 wings, 6 legs. And this muscle, the middle part of their body, is called the thorax. Can you say that? Thorax. And the thorax I call the muscle because this is where the legs and the wings come off. And then the bottom part of the bee, abdomen. You guys already know the abdomen, yep. These have 3 body parts: head, thorax, abdomen. And this is where the nectar stomach and the venom and all the other body parts in there. So another question about the bees is how many eyes do they have?
3.
Most people look at that and say, oh yeah, 3 eyes, but guess what? These 2 eyes,
They have 14,000 eyes in all.
those are the wing facets inside the eye.
Yeah, kind of.
We actually say bees have 5. These 2 eyes on the outside, I'll show you that drone picture again. These
Compound
eyes, are what a bee uses to see outside when it's bright and light. these 2 eyes right here, and on this little model, it's these 2 eyes, but these 3 eyes, you were right when you saw those as eyes. What do you think? Is it light inside the hive? Do they just flip a switch and get to see where the queen is?
It's dark.
It's dark. So these eyes don't do them any good inside the hive, but they've got these 3 other eyes that help them see inside the hive. They also use their sense of smell because the pheromones are being spread all around the hive, especially the queen's pheromones, her scent. So the bees know, oh, our queen is healthy, our queen is laying eggs, and we're in good shape. So 5 eyes, 6 legs, and 4 wings, and 3 body parts. I'm going to ask you guys to sing a song with us, okay, to make sure you remember that. When you were little, do you remember when someone used to sing with you, maybe in kindergarten, maybe preschool?
Yeah.
Head, shoulders, knees, and toes, knees and toes. Okay, let's sing that song, but as if we were bees. So, I'll just talk you through it, and then I'm going to ask you guys to sing it with us. Head, thorax, abdomen, abdomen. Head, thorax, abdomen, abdomen. Let's talk about the bee. 4 wings, 5 eyes. So 4 wings, we do the motions.
4 wings.
5 eyes. And then 6 hairy legs. Head, thorax, abdomen, abdomen. Can we sing it together?
Yeah.
Do you want them to stay sitting?
I think that would probably be best.
We will stay sitting then, no problem. Worker bees, here we go. Head, thorax, abdomen, abdomen. Head, thorax, abdomen, abdomen. 4 wings, 5 eyes, 6 hairy legs. Head, thorax, abdomen, abdomen. Good job. You'll probably remember thorax now because you sang that song. And you can ask people and see if you can trick them into saying 2 wings when you know that they really have 4 wings. All right. So, Mike, you want to talk about why do bees, now that we talked about their body parts, what do they eat? And how do they get that food? Those are the questions we were thinking about asking.
Well, what do bees eat? That's an easy one.
Bees eat pollen.
Well, that's very good. I thought you were going to say honey. But they do. They eat honey and they eat pollen. And pollen has protein in it. Pollen is like eating chicken or fish or beef. It makes your muscles strong. And honey is like eating sugar or pancake syrup.
Or bread,
Or-
carbohydrates.
Yeah, carbohydrates like bread. So they eat both of those. They eat honey and they eat pollen.
And how do they make, and where do they get honey? We know that it took a whole bunch of bees, 800 to 900 bees to make all that honey.
They get it at Whole Foods.
They buy it at the store, right? Where do bees get honey? I mean, how do they get honey? Is it honey in the flowers? Thumbs up if you think honey's in the flower. Thumbs down if you think honey's not really in the flower. There's something in the flower that turns into honey. Does anybody know what it is? What's it? Go ahead.
Nectar?
Nectar.
That's right.
Yes. It's a sweet, sugary, watery substance that bees know is waiting for them. So here's a picture. Let me ask you this. Is this a girl or a boy?
A girl.
A girl, a worker. We call the girls worker bees because they're the ones that leave the hive and forage. Forage means going grocery shopping. And they go to the flowers to grocery shop. So here's a worker. You know, she's covered in hair, which is really helpful because when she flies through the air, she's using her 4 wings and she's creating static electricity. Do you guys know what that is? When you go down a slide on a dry day and your hair stands up, or if you take a full balloon and you rub it on your hair and then you put it on the wall, it sticks.
Yeah.
That's called static electricity. And bees create that when they fly. And when she lands on a flower, the pollen jumps up on her body and sticks to her fur, her hair, and she brushes it all down. You guys see that big yellow ball of
They're
pollen?
basically flying
That's
dust
just-
mops.
That's the sack that she puts all the cherry.
Pollen.
Yeah, pollen.
This is her pollen basket. You might hear somebody say the bee's knees. You're the bee's knees. That's a good thing. They're talking about where the pollen is stored. And at a beehive, you can sit there and watch the bees flying back, and they have these big yellow, sometimes white, sometimes pink, depending on what flower they went to, baskets of
I've seen
pollen.
blue pollen.
I think I have too, yeah, depending on what they eat. And while they're there, they use their long tongue. Does anybody know what the tongue of a bee is called? It's got a funny long name. It's like a straw, and this little, here's the antenna, but that little black straw is her tongue, and it's called a proboscis. Can you say that? So she comes to the flower, dips her tongue in there, and sucks up as much nectar as she can, and then it goes right into her nectar stomach. And this is where it gets really fun. The way she makes honey, she comes back to the hive. She arrives and finds a sister who's in the hive waiting for her. They take the pollen, they store the pollen in the cells. You can look in a beehive and see all different colors of pollen, but then she throws up the nectar out of that stomach into her sister's mouth. That's what they're doing right there. You can see that proboscis. She's throwing up in her sister's mouth, and that pollen goes into her sister's stomach. And then her sister puts it into a cell. You can see inside these cells, you can see some nectar there.
Unusual adaptation. Are you glad that's not one you have?
Yeah.
Just saying.
Just saying, next time you guys have some honey on your toast, it's bee vomit, but if it wasn't, you wouldn't get honey, you just have sugar water because it's the enzymes. You know how we eat and our enzymes in our mouth and our stomach, they digest our food? Bees have great special enzymes that take the nectar and turn it into honey.
But now they have a different stomach for when they eat.
Yes.
So when they eat, it goes into their regular stomach, like our stomach. But they have a special, I guess maybe a stomach isn't quite the
Nectar
what is it?
Organ.
pouch.
Yeah, a pouch. Yeah, actually the word for it is crop, C-R-O-P, nectar crop, but that's kind of a funny word, but it's just a place where they store the nectar. They do absorb a little bit of water out of that, so every time they do that, it gets a little thicker and a little thicker. So what happens, they put it in the cell, is that honey then, or
Not yet.
what happens?
It takes a while. It has to evaporate. You know what evaporation is? When water leaves something. Do you know the numbers in that, like
Well, nectar is about 50-50 water and sugar. You know, you could taste nectar, if you ever sucked on a honeysuckle flower, it's kind of sweet, okay? It's just got a little bit of sugar water in it, basically. But in order for it to be honey, it's got to be 18% water, and then the rest of it's sugar. So it's very low, it's very dried out, it's very thick.
in one way, they can evaporate. You know, the temperature will evaporate some of that, but they also use their wings for a lot of different things, including evaporating their nectar into honey. Here's a picture of a bee, a girl. She's actually using her wings right now to this little gland right here. Remember the gland on her stomach? So this is a gland on her, behind here, on her abdomen, that spreads the smell of pheromones around the hive. And they communicate by spreading that smell around. So their wings are really important to them. They use them for flying, but also communicating.
On that, what happens is, you see the entrance to the hive is down here, and it's kind of small. So if the bees go out and forage, the little bees that you're talking about will stand right here on the entrance, and they'll turn around and they'll fan the pheromone. And that way the bees that are out flying around foraging know where their home is, and they know where to come to. They'll follow that smell.
So bees have an amazing sense of smell, is what you're saying.
Yes, they do.
Much better than their eyesight. Their world is more about smells than it is seeing.
So they can find their home just using their sense of smell.
They can follow other bees too, by
Using
smelling
their
where they've
sense of
been.
smell.
And they use the sunlight and triangulate and do these really high-level things that I'm still learning about. Scientists are still studying so that we learn more about bees.
So it would be as if someone dropped you off in your neighborhood with a blindfold on and your hands over your ears, and they said, smell your way back home.
Now, if your mom was cooking bacon, you could find it.
If she were the only one on the block that was
Yeah.
cooking bacon.
Yeah.
If everybody on the block was cooking something different, then it would be more of a challenge. But they have a really amazing sense of smell.
And you know, if my mom was making chocolate chip cookies and I was from the hive where chocolate chip cookies were being made, I could find my hive by that smell. But if I tried to get into the bacon hive, guess what? Little guard bees at the door would say, you don't belong here. This is not your home. Go away. And they could even sting me if I was really pushy, wanting to get in and have some bacon. And in fact, sometimes hives are robbed, not just by skunks and us, but by other bees. I had a beehive that had all this honey, and 3 weeks after we had seen it, we were like, okay, let's go take some of our share, leave some for the bees. I'll talk about that in a second. And then we'll have some of our honey. We went in and all the bees were gone and all the honey was gone. It was so sad, and that's called robbing. Don't know exactly what happened to the bees. Maybe the queen wasn't laying her eggs or something happened. Maybe they got a disease. But all the other bees went in and ate that honey, so there wasn't a drop left. So, how many of these bees live in a hive? Do you know which bee this is?
The queen.
The queen. And how many queens live in a beehive?
One.
One, yeah, she says, show me with your finger. There's a reason this queen has such a long body, too. I'd like to show this poster with the queen. You guys see how she's got this longer abdomen? See her wings are here, and a worker's wings are at the end of their abdomen. You can see. I see some of you know why her abdomen's so long. It's
Because of the royal jelly.
well, she turned into a bee because when she was an egg and a larva, she got fed royal jelly. So there's a lot to tell you. Royal jelly is another thing that bees produce out of a gland in their head. It comes out of their head, it's white, and it's this really awesome, special stuff. And so this is a worker bee. This is a baby worker bee. Here's a queen bee. You see how hers has to be bigger, her cell is bigger. It's kind of the size of a peanut in its shell. And she's getting her whole baby life, she's getting royal jelly. All baby bees get royal jelly for about 3 days. And then if they're going to be a worker, they start giving them something called bee bread. Do you see this yellow stuff right here? There's some royal jelly left over. This is bee bread. It's a mixture of pollen and honey. And it makes for a perfect worker bee. And yes, that royal jelly is what makes her a queen. But the reason her abdomen is this long is because she has to lay an egg down this cell and get it right in the middle down there. She has to have a longer abdomen to do that. So just real quickly, we talked a little earlier about how bees turn from an egg to a larva. You guys know the next stage? Pupa. And they make their chrysalis in there, and that's what this brown stuff is, and then they become a bee. They transform into a bee, and then they're born.
It's a lot like a butterfly. They make a cocoon and they come out of the cocoon. Very similar.
I know what I was going to ask. I wanted to know. Well, Mike, right now, are they laying eggs in the hive? Is there a queen that's doing any egg laying right now, this time of year, right around Thanksgiving?
Probably a little bit, but a lot less, and maybe pretty soon none at all.
The queen stops laying eggs in the winter because there's not much to eat out there. Spring is where you see all those flowers blooming. That's great for bees. They want to get out there and take as much of that nectar and pollen home. But right now, as we're getting into winter, you guys see the bare trees. You see flowers dying. There's not a lot of food. So where do they get their food in the wintertime? They store it and they eat their honey. Those worker bees work so hard all spring and summer so that in the winter they have food. But they make their hive much smaller. They kick out all the drones. Sorry boys, that's just the way it goes. Boys are kicked out, they're not needed. And they have fewer bees and there are fewer workers because the queen has stopped laying eggs. And they get through the winter. It's called overwintering. Most bees, native bees that aren't honeybees, everybody dies. And one queen hibernates. And in the spring, that one queen comes back and starts all over again. But a bee colony, a honeybee colony, has workers with her. So in the spring, how many eggs is she laying?
Oh, in the summer, 1,000, 1,500 eggs a day.
A day?
A day.
Baby bees.
How many bees in a beehive?
In the summer, about 40 to 50,000.
Oh.
They need all those workers to go out and get the food while they can.
Now, how many bees, how long do bees live and how many die every day?
In the summer, when they're working that hard, you guys, those bees only live about 6 weeks. They're in the hive for about 3, taking care of their duties in the hive, making wax, making cells, feeding babies. And then they leave for about 3 weeks to get food. And it's only 6 weeks that they live because they work so hard. But in the winter, when they're not flying and working so hard and taking care of babies, they can live to be 6 months. It's a lot longer life for them. So here's a question for you. If a queen lays 1,000 of these eggs a day, maybe more, how many babies are born 3 weeks later?
2,000?
Up to 2,000? Sometimes I even heard 3,000. What will happen in a hive when there's that many babies? It gets crowded, right? Suddenly we were doubling our size and doubling our size. We would be so crowded in here. And bees are really, really smart. They know when they're so crowded that they need to make a move. They need to figure out what to do. And they make another queen. And the old queen stops laying eggs. And they make her go on a diet. They kind of chase her around. You think the queen's in charge telling everybody what to do. That's not the case in honeybees. The workers, the queen, and the drones work together. So the old queen goes on a diet because she's so fat she can't fly. So she goes on a diet before she gets ready to leave the hive with about half the workers. They go and find a new home. And the new queen is born, and she stays with the workers and continues the job. The one queen lives and takes over running the hive. And I know Mike's a professional beekeeper. How many beehives do you have, Mike?
About 50.
Where do you get your bees?
Well, I grow my own bees. The beehives get really big and they get full of bees, and then bees want to swarm in the spring, which means they want to divide the hive. Half of the bees will fly away. It gets too crowded. Just as if all of a sudden your mom brought home 15 new children to live at your house, and all of a sudden you had 15 brothers and sisters. Everybody would be crowded in the house and you wouldn't have a bedroom. Somebody would have to move out, right? So the bees get too crowded, and the queen will leave and all the bees will go with them, and they form this, and they land on a tree somewhere. It's called a swarm of bees. So a swarm of bees isn't a whole bunch of bees chasing you around, and it isn't a tree that has a whole bunch of bees on it. Sometimes a tree will have a lot of flowers and have a lot of bees, and people think it's a swarm. A swarm is really a big clump of bees with a queen in the middle, and they're looking for a new home. Now, they're not really that dangerous when they're like this. They don't usually like to sting. You can almost walk right up to them, but it's always a good idea if you see a swarm like this to tell your parents to call a beekeeper. Beekeepers will come and they'll collect this, they'll put them in a box like we showed you here, this little box right here. You can shake the branch and shake them into the box, and they'll make their new home in the box. You can close it up and take the bees off, put them with some other bees somewhere in a barn or wherever you keep your other bees. So a good thing that you can do for the bees is to call a beekeeper when you see a swarm.
And that's what I was going to say. That's how I got all my beehives. Sometimes people buy bees, about $120 to buy bees from a bee store. There's a couple of places to do that. But those bees don't know their queen necessarily. The queen's in a little cage until they get used to her smells. And sometimes those colonies don't always make it. These girls and queen that leave the hive, they know each other. All they need is a new home. And beekeepers, it's like getting a Christmas present on Christmas morning. When someone calls me and says, Jen, there's a beehive right down the street, or a bee swarm. It's the best day. I go down, I get in my gear, and just like Mike said, we just kind of tap the branch. Or on a fence once, I just moved my box and they kind of fall into the box. They're not stinging me at all. If the queen's inside there, they smell her. And then I leave it there all day long because there's little worker bees flying away from the swarm looking for a new house. Oh, maybe in your teacher's closet. Would that be a good place? No. Oh, maybe in that barn. Maybe we find a tree somewhere. But if I get there first before they all agree that they found a new home and the queen's in the box, they all return to her at night and then we take them home. It's a really great way to get
Now you asked me, where do I get my bees? So this is one way to get bees. Another way is you can buy them. Believe it or not, they come through the mail, the post office. They put them in a little box with a screen, thousands of bees in this little box, and they mail them. Another way is if you have a very big beehive, you can take the beehive in two parts. You can split the beehive and make two out of one. And what will happen is kind of amazing because you have one queen over here, and now you've got another box over here that doesn't have a queen. The bees will raise a brand new queen. So that you will then have two queens and two beehives. So another way that I get new beehives is by dividing the beehives that I have up into smaller ones.
So I know we've talked about why bees are really important. The ways you can help, Mike and I have just really talked about when you see a bee swarm. Lots of times people don't see it because when they're flying, they fly for a really short time, they land somewhere and then they just stay there. If you're walking on a path, you might not notice it, but listen, and if you ever see a bee swarm, do us a favor, call us.
Look for that big clump. When they're flying, it looks like a tornado of bees. It's not just, you've probably seen one. It's literally, they swirl, and I mean, there are so many bees you can't imagine. It's not just a tree that has a whole bunch of bees on it. Because flowering trees sometimes will have a lot of bees on them.
And another way you guys can help, not everybody has to be the beekeeper to help the bees, but we know why we want bees, right? We all want bees because we want to keep our food supply as diverse as it is with all these choices, and we like honey, we like wax. But you can plant flowers for bees. Back a long time ago, farmers used to plant, have their rows of things they were growing, and they'd do cover crops that bees would go and eat. Now they don't do that so much, and some farmers and some people who garden spray poisons on top of that. They'll use poisons, insecticides, or herbicides that kill bees. Think about the bees. If they're going to a plant that was sprayed with poisons, how do you think the bee's going to feel? Thumbs down for sure. They're going to be sick. And that's one reason some beehives don't make it, is they don't have enough to eat, or they're eating food that's poison to them. So plant a garden and put in organic flowers. That's a great way to help the bees too. In fact, I wanted to make sure I didn't forget to show you guys. In China, really small, and I'm sorry because I haven't found a bigger poster. In China, there's a place where they use so many poisons, all the bees died. And guess, in this apple tree, who's doing the pollinating? Humans are pollinating.
With
Otherwise, they
paintbrushes.
wouldn't have any apples.
They take little paintbrushes and put the pollen in.
And we're not very good pollinators with little paintbrush compared to a bee who visits flower after flower and makes apple after apple.
Although I am having a connection. Who am I thinking of?
Oh, Mr. Burbank.
Right? That's who I was thinking about when you said that. He did a pretty good job, didn't he? With that whole pollinating thing.
Sorry, Luther Burbank potato, right?
Yes.
He could cross-pollinate,
Oh, yeah.
yes. The scientist
Show
knows
it to
what
me
he
too,
wants.
son, if you're having a connection with me. Right? You guys learned about that.
Do you suppose Luther Burbank could have pollinated enough food for this class to eat?
Probably.
Yeah, he might have. That's good. What about the whole school? What about all of Santa Rosa? It would be hard for one man to pollinate that much, but thanks to him, the scientist that he was, he's created some great foods. But he needed bees to pollinate his foods too, so, yes.
What did he create?
What did he create? I know there's a Burbank potato, and I think there's a...
You should ask your teacher
Rust-
when you get back to
Yeah.
class. She'll have a book to give you.
You know, you ever have a baked potato?
They have a Chaska Daisy.
Shasta Daisy's one, I remember.
The big brown potato that you eat as a baked potato, that was something
Someone
that's
has
Sorry, I didn't mean to get us down.
That's okay, no, I'm glad you made a connection, because connections are helping remember. You guys, we're not gonna be here much longer, but is there, I don't think there's anything we forgot to tell you about bees. There's so much, we could talk for another hour, but is there any question that you've got that we can answer while we're here?
Now, think third graders, a question ends with a question mark, so you're asking for information. You're not sharing your connections, you're not sharing something that made you remind you of this. You're just asking a question if she calls on you. Yes.
Does the queen bee sting?
Excellent question.
Good question.
Is she a girl?
Yes.
So she has a stinger. But that's a good question, because guess what? The queen stinger is different from a worker stinger. Workers have the barb, which is like a little fish hook that gets stuck in our skin. A queen bee does not. A queen bee has a straight stinger. So a queen bee could sting me over and over and over and over again. But guess what? Of all the beekeepers I've ever talked to, no one's ever been stung by their queen bees. The queen uses her stinger, like we talked earlier, to go over and make sure she's the only queen in the hive. She uses her stinger to sting other queens. And that's the only time I've ever heard of a queen using her stinger. Other questions? Yes, in the blue shirt.
I know something that looked like Burbank.
But she's
Can you-
only saying, do you have a question to
About
ask?
honeybees?
Because they have to leave and go give their presentation to Miss Lisa's class. So we're only sharing questions right now. If you want information before they leave,
Question?
then you can go back and ask around and stuff. That's fine.
The bigger one? You know, it's a good question. The bees, it kind of depends on the time of year and how many bees there are and those kind of things. But they can make this in a week. They can do it pretty fast.
In just maybe 2 days, I pulled
Yeah.
this out of our hive. When they're trying to start a new hive, they are really busy making beeswax. This honeycomb and brood comb. Brood comb is where the babies are. They do it fast, because that's how they make more babies, and that's how they survive.
It's really kind of amazing how fast they make it.
In the back with the stripes.
What if bees and the worker bees and the queen can't find a new home?
You know what? Good thing you brought that up, because we didn't actually tell you. You know that picture of the swarm? There's a man that teaches about beekeeping at Santa Rosa Junior College here in town, and he says less than 20%, so 1/5 of those swarms make it. All the others die.
They don't find a home and they don't live.
They don't find it, they don't build up their population enough. Or sometimes, back in the old days, people would see bees and they'd spray because they were afraid. I think today more and more people are realizing honeybees are really important to us, so they're not spraying. If you ever have a beehive come into a barn or a house, There are beekeepers that can open that wall and take that hive out. We'll save those bees rather than have them killed.